Good evening and welcome to Fleetway's Roundup with your boy Darius. And once again, as always, I'm glad to be seeing everybody that's going to be tuning in tonight. As we got not as it shouldn't be as long of an episode as normal, but it is going to be a pretty, I would say a pretty big episode overall for the stuff that we're going to be kind of going over tonight. And we got a little bit of sports news, a little bit of some movie news, and movie and animation news, and then we're gonna round things off with some video game news, like I've said in some of the posts that I've been making, as well as in the description. So we're gonna start getting things started here. First things first, there was a topic that kind of came through before we did get into the show tonight, and I'm just going to get serious with you guys for a second here. I wouldn't have talked about this, but it had came across my feed, reported by ESPN, so it kind of started to blur over into one of our topics. You already know, I've said it before, and I'll always say it, that there's normally four topics that we normally like to go over. We like to go over sports, football. We normally like to go over movies. We like to normally go over animation, and then we also like to go over video games. So normally, as you guys have known, I don't typically get into serious topics on this show. I try to keep this show a little bit on the lighthearted side when it comes to stuff that we talk about. There's maybe been a few times you've heard like certain things get serious on here, but we normally don't get into that kind of stuff. But I felt like this was kind of some news that I know that there have been people in my life that have talked about, that are probably watching this and maybe didn't know about this outcome. So I'm making this outcome aware to those people, as well as just to you in general, as you may not have known. But and it kind of and this, like I said before, this news kind of crossed over into the sports side of thing a little bit, due to one of the people involved and where their future could have possibly been if things had gone differently. But that breaking news was that, as maybe some of you might have seen on the news, there was this 17-year-old Carmelo Anthony who he had was at a track meet where sadly events one thing led to another. It resulted in him stabbing a student from, I guess, an opposing school. And we know that I remember hearing that there was a trial going on. Well, apparently, from Fox News and even ESPN reported that the verdict has been decided, and they have found Carmelo Anthony guilty in the murder of Austin Metcalf. I'm not going to go too deep into this topic because I don't want this to turn into some kind of show where there's a back and forth, or things turning into some sort of race war. As the end of the day, simply what we want to kind of just talk about here is it sucks for both sides in this. It sucks that a life had to be taken, and it sucks that sadly one life ended and now another life is going to be going into prison. And from what I've heard, now I don't think that they've officially settled on the sentence just yet. Yeah, they haven't. It looks like they haven't really fully came down to the sentence for Carmelo Anthony, but from what I've been hearing, this could turn into where he could be spending life in prison, which is sad to see that, especially for someone 17 years old. And like I said, again, it sucks for both sides. We don't know. This whole story has been kind of a he say, she say kind of thing. Some people have been saying that this has been an ongoing thing between them, which even then I don't know the full truth of that, because it sounds like these two were at two different schools. But I don't know. Like I said, I don't want to get too much into it, because a lot of stuff, whether it's people who are trying to be on Austin's side or Carmelo's side, it's a lot of he said, she said kind of stuff. And at this moment, I don't want to be going and jumping to sides here. I'm trying to stay in the neutral. I'm trying to stay in the middle. And again, like I said, it sucks that a life has been taken, and it sucks that a life is now possibly going to be over, being stuck in prison. And all I can say is my prayers go out to the family of Austin, because it's never a good thing to be losing a family member like that. So my prayers go out to them, and especially my prayers go out to Carmelo Anthony's family, because to be having to see someone that you've been so close to for years, and you've known them on a personal level, and now knowing that there's a chance that they're going to be spending life in prison, that's never something that you want to be living the rest of your life with that on your conscience. So again, my prayers go out to both sides in this, because you just don't want to hear this kind of stuff happening. And again, I just wanted to make this news known, and I had to make kind of a decision here on whether I was going to talk about this at the beginning of the show or at the ending, because either way, depending on whoever's listening to this, it could have different effects. Like if I did at the beginning, it might constantly live in their head where they're thinking about this situation and have it carry on while I'm talking about all these other topics. And some people might even feel like, oh, you should have saved this at the end because now it's going to feel weird transitioning from this to all my other stuff. But I don't know. I felt like it would be weird to talk about all the topics that we were going to be talking about today and then end the show on such a, I don't know, a bittersweet, not really bittersweet, a very sad kind of news. And I don't want to end y'all off with sad news. I'd rather get the news out now. So then if it's carried over in your mind, hopefully the other topics that we talk about will then be able to get rid of it. So again, just wanted to bring this to attention, and hopefully that makes you guys at least aware of where, if you were following this, where it has sadly ended up for our, for 17-year-old Carmelo Anthony. So again, my prayers go out, and we're gonna go and keep moving here. So since we are talking about sports, one of the few things that did happen recently in these past few days was last night we had the continuation of the NBA Finals with Game 3 with the San Antonio Spurs taking on the New York Knicks. And things were getting a little intense here because we knew that after Game 2, the Knicks had a 2-0 lead on the Spurs. Everybody agreed the Spurs needed to win last night's game, especially if they wanted to really have any chance of possibly making this a series, because if you going into game 4 3-0, then you're literally gonna be carrying on this whole pressure of every game is your last. And even now, it's still any game can be their last, but at least there's a little bit more, like they could now go into like, okay, we put up a fight at their home in the Garden, and now we have, at least we have a series. And I'm glad, because I was getting worried, especially with how good the Spurs had been playing all sorry how good the Spurs have been playing all during the playoffs and stuff, and especially in that game against the Thunder. So it would have sucked if this series had ended so abruptly and bittersweet like this. So I'm glad that they're staying alive. I'm glad we're going to be able to see them continuing. I know that we'll be getting our next game. If I'm correct, it should be since there's no game tonight, it should be tomorrow that we'll get our next matchup of Game 4. But yeah, things are going to be interesting for sure. Once again, every time I keep watching any games with the Spurs, and especially Wembanyama, I have to admit, that boy, he does not play to be your friend. He plays the game, and he plays to try to get you upset. Because I saw that clip. I'm not going to post it because I know that some of these, whether it's NBA, NFL, could be very weird with the type of content that you post, and could possibly try to take down my videos. But there was the clip during the game I remember seeing where Wemby's over on Jalen Brunson, and he just flat out just takes his hand, shoves him down and stuff. And I was like, oh my goodness, that was the most blatant, like, that was the most obvious thing ever. But at the same time, the Knicks have been playing aggressive on Wemby. Wemby has just responded. This is kind of what some basketball fans like to see in playoffs when stuff like this gets intense. But yeah, looks like we could have a series, and I'm glad that we're going to be getting that. So hey, we'll have to see what happens here, and I can't wait to see again. As always, as I've said when we talked about this series before, if you are rooting for either of these teams, let me know down below in the chat, because this looks like we could have a fun game ahead of us. But so yeah, that's just kind of what we want to briefly talk about with the finals. Now we're going to move on to a few little NFL news here. One of the NFL news that we're going to be talking about was recently, it was reported by Adam Schefter that the Cincinnati Bengals have restructured the contract of the quarterback Joe Burrow, and it is creating a $10 million cap room space, which will allow Cincinnati to at least kind of work with some of their total cap, because especially after that trade they had with the New York Giants to get Dexter Lawrence there, it was starting to make things a little tight. So clearly it makes sense they were going to have to restructure someone's contract. And I mean, I got to give a lot of props to Joe Burrow and his professionalism, because this is not the first time that this man has actively and willingly discussed with the Bengals to restructure his contracts for possible pay cuts to help them be able to do things to make the team better. He has always proven time and time again that he is a very team he's kind of a very team player. And again, you like to see that in a player, especially for a quarterback. That really shows that he is a leader of this locker room, to be taking these kind of hits. He did it when it came to the Bengals having to make out a deal to get both Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, the wide receivers, back in that locker room, and he said, "Is I whatever it takes to be able to keep this team the same." And he willingly took a pay cut, and now here he is again taking essentially another pay cut because a restructure. There's going to be some of that money taken away to give more space to Cincinnati, and he's once again taking another pay cut to allow the team to be able to work room so then they can properly work that contract with Dexter Lawrence so he can get his money so he can maybe help them make it to the Super Bowl. So we'll have to see. But again, just want to say, I mean, good job on Joe Burrow being the bigger man in this situation, taking a pay cut so this team can be better. One of our next news is some Rams news, and it's not good Rams news. Even though there has been good Rams news from Adam Schefter, briefly he did talk about on his podcast where he did say that it's looking more and more likely that Aaron Donald could be returning. Yes, I know we've been talking about it. We keep talking about Aaron Donald, but you just don't understand that man it was a beast. He's been staying in shape, and even though he's 35, the dude still is in shape and is still looking like a dangerous weapon. So he is looking more and more likely like he could be coming back. And I know that this is definitely the reaction to from a lot of teams in the league, knowing that there's a chance they're going to have to play against Aaron Donald coming up. And their reaction has to be like this. And I know you're probably like, whoa, what was that sound? Well, that's me getting that soundboard up and running. So yeah, like I said, I told you, we getting some things changed on here, and more and more we're adapting to the show and this format. So yes, we got a soundboard working. So you might even be hearing more of that soundboard throughout the show as we keep talking about some of this stuff. But as we just talked about that briefly, good news with Aaron Donald, as you probably have already read ahead of me, there is sadly bad news. Bad news with the Rams and involving a player getting arrested. Yeah, so as reported by Adam Schefter, Rams left tackle Alaric Jackson was arrested on a felony domestic violence charge Monday night. The LAPD confirmed to ESPN's Sarah Barshop, and it's like, oh my goodness. Just as the Rams were getting good news after the trade with Myles Garrett, and now the possibility that Aaron Donald could come back, now one of their guys who's a essential piece to that offensive line to keep Matthew Stafford protected is now arrested due to domestic violence charges, this is kind of a little in line with what we just had, what my Packers are dealing with right now with Josh Jacobs. So this is all we know for now. We don't know what's going to become of this. We don't know if he's innocent. We don't know if he's guilty. And again, this is another case where a team is now going to have to be kind of sitting on this in their mind, where they're going to have to be like, yikes, how do we go about this? Do we start looking at other offensive linemen to try to maybe bring onto this team to replace them, or do we just call it quits and just kind of sit and wait to find out if he can play, or will he be suspended? So it's going to be a lot of those kind of question marks and stuff. So kind of crazy that in the span of a couple of weeks, we've now had two pretty essential players to their teams now in legal trouble that can affect their team's upcoming season. So we'll have to see what happens. Of course, we got to stay neutral on this. We don't know what the case is. So once again, if we do get any updates, definitely I'll try to make a YouTube short maybe to break this down, especially if it happens before we do another show next Tuesday. But yeah, so that's what we got from that. Speaking of offensive linemen, we got an announcement from the Cleveland Browns that their longtime left guard, Joel Bitonio, oh my goodness, I got something in my eye there, my bad, guys. Joel Bitonio, who has been with the team for 12 whole seasons, has announced his retirement. And man, I mean, it sucks to it sucks to see that, because if I'm correct, funny enough, I think he was actually one of the offensive linemen that the Browns weren't able to re-sign, because if you maybe, for any of my football people out there were paying attention, there was a lot of news coming out that the Browns basically were seeing a majority of their starting linemen go into free agency because they couldn't get anyone re-signed with a new contract. And Joel Bitonio was one of them. And if I'm correct, they did not re-sign him. So he went into free agency. I guess no one really wanted to take a risk on Joel. And I mean, I get it. He's been in the league for 12 seasons. That's a long time. And he's a good guard, but I can understand why maybe people are hesitant. If he is still on the Browns, it's like a case of no one wants to trade for him, and maybe this is just a decision. He's like, I'm done. But again, this is kind of, it falls in line of that. Like, this is another Brown, someone that you could definitely make an argument of possible Brown legend who is retiring a Brown and has never been able to really sniff the Super Bowl, and maybe playoffs, but no Super Bowl, which always sucks to see that. It's always one of those things. It's sometimes you love those players that are, loyal to their team and never go anywhere else. But then there's always that party that kind of feels bad. Cause it's like, dang, you're loyal, but your team ain't doing nothing to get you a ring or have a deep run to help you out for being so loyal. So it sucks. But again, he's had a career. He definitely, people would talk about him being a really good guard, and good luck to him. Hey, I mean, anything can happen. Who knows? Maybe the Rams could call him up after the whole Alaric Jackson thing going on and be like, hey, Joel, we know you just retired, but maybe you could come out of retirement and play for us. We're trying to go for a Super Bowl run, and maybe you could be that guy to help our O-line to protect Matthew Stafford. Let's get you a ring. Who knows? You never know. The league is crazy. It could happen. Anything could happen in the NFL. But again, I mean, congrats on the career overall to Joel Bitonio, and wishing him the best of luck wherever he ends up next. But last but not least, one of our last little sports NFL news was, we have talked about this cornerback before. On June 8th, it was reported by Adam Schefter that cornerback L'Jarius Sneed signed a one-year deal up to $5 million. He is re-signing with the Kansas City Chiefs. And we talked about this cornerback before because we did talk about how he was found not guilty and all of his charges were dropped. So this kind of brought up a lot of those questions now of, okay, now that those charges are dropped, he's probably going to get signed with another team. We just didn't know. I was hoping maybe my Packers would have an interest in him, because I think L'Jarius Sneed could still have a good season left one more season left in him. And I know that my team really needed another cornerback, but sadly, that was not the case. I did see that there were reports coming out that he was visiting Kansas City. And once I started to see that, I was like, okay, yikes. That probably means that he's going to be, he's probably going to end up reuniting with them. And lo and behold, he is going to become a Kansas City Chief again. That's where his season started. That's where he had his best seasons, when he was winning Super Bowls with them and stuff. So, hey, I mean, it's good news for the Chiefs. They're getting at least a veteran presence in that cornerback room to help them out after losing Jalen Watson and Trent McDuffie. So we will definitely see what happens with L'Jarius Sneed. Let's see if he can have one more good season, and hopefully this isn't a waste of his time going back to Kansas City. But congrats to him getting signed, and that's really all we have to talk about as far as NFL news. But we're now going to go and move on to some movie animation news. One of those first little news that we got here is that of Donald Duck. Yes, you heard that right. Donald Duck is hitting his 92 year anniversary, which is crazy to think about, that Donald Duck has been around for 92 years. I mean, I wasn't even alive. I wasn't even alive when he's been around for, but again, just want to at least say that happy birthday, Donald Duck, a very iconic face as far as when it comes to cartoons. Everybody knows him next to Mickey Mouse and Goofy, him wearing the sailor outfit, and of course that iconic voice. I'm not going to do it, even though I think I could do a decent Donald Duck voice, but I'm not going to do it here on the show. Maybe another time, but not now. But again, happy 92nd birthday, Donald Duck. But staying in the Disney side of things, another little Disney franchise, well, Pixar, technically Disney franchise, also hit its 20th anniversary, and that is the Cars franchise, which I remember growing up, I remember watching this movie when I was younger, and I remember on my old Xbox playing the Cars video game. Loved Lightning McQueen. Loved this movie. It's actually, I would say Cars is definitely up there in those top 5 like Pixar movies. I loved Cars. It always, of course, as a young boy, that kind of movie, definitely with the cars racing and all that kind of stuff, was fun. And rewatching it as you get older, it has some good messages too in there. um, showing this hot shot that starts to get humble and learn there's more to life than just winning races. Like, it's overall a really good movie, and growing up you start to really see more of that kind of stuff. That's always something that's fun when animated movies that you maybe grew up watching and you rewatch as you get older, where you're like, wow, like this message was kind of deep that I couldn't understand as a kid, that now getting older I'm like, okay, there's a good message in that. So yeah, I mean, happy 20th anniversary. And funny enough, they've actually even announced that they will be re-releasing the Cars movie in theaters for its 20th anniversary. So who knows? Maybe in September I might consider going back to see that movie. Who knows? Yeah, it would be a fun rewatch to see back on screen. I know they'll probably be packed because I know there is a fan base for the Cars movie. So it'll be fun to see that again. Happy 20th anniversary, Cars. But staying in the animation little side of things, we're going to kind of talk about something that was revealed, funny enough, in that was kind of revealed in one of our topics in the video game side of things, but it is more of an animation movie news, and that is the Among Us show. We have kind of talked a little bit about Among Us and even the show, but not too much. But during the funny enough, during the one of the gaming events that happened, it was the Summer Games Fest. They had dropped a trailer for the show releasing the same day. And it's funny enough because before that Summer Games Fest happened, people went on to Paramount Plus and saw that the show was out. People had seen that the show was out, and everybody it finally clicked in people's heads that, oh my goodness. It finally clicked in people's heads that someone at Paramount messed up and accidentally released the show prematurely before before it was supposed to get announced during the Summer Games Fest, and everybody kind of just put their hands over their head and were like, "Oh my god!" Because it's just like, man, it's like, come on now. Y'all were supposed to announce it at that event and then release it, not release it and basically spoil the surprise, because everybody was wondering what happened to the show, because this show was announced all the way back in 2024 when this show was first announced, and no one heard anything. It was quiet. There was then the rumors, not even rumors, it was kind of confirmed that the show was already done. It's just a case of they were waiting for someone to kind of, I guess, pick it up or something to properly put it on their streaming platform, and it was just dead silence. Nothing happened. People were like, okay, did the show get canceled? What's going to happen? So the show finally released. It was a shadow drop, and for a show that was treated so poorly by Paramount, I've been hearing that it's actually really funny and a really good show. And I definitely plan on watching it too at some point. Probably I'll do it even, who knows, I might even do like a quick video later down this week of me doing kind of a brief review of the show, giving my opinions on what I thought. Because overall, just for anybody that doesn't know what Among Us is, it is a video game that released years ago, essentially a kind of whodunit, where you are playing as these crewmates on a ship in space, where essentially as you're playing through the game, it's kind of a pointing fingers, trying to find out who, there's all these crewmates that are innocent, and then there's one crewmate that is secretly an alien on the ship, and you have to be kind of figuring out who's the alien and try to vote them out. But of course you can always mess up if you see things that look suspicious from people who are innocent. It's a really, I haven't played it a few times before. I played it with friends. It's actually a really fun game. And when I heard that there was a show, I was like, okay, interesting. And from what I've been hearing, the show is really good, and I've been seeing people on social media have been posting clips left and right from it, so I'm definitely excited. Like I said, I'm definitely going to be trying to check it out. I might even check it out later on tonight, so then I can maybe do a quick little review for you guys later in the week. So again, congratulations to it finally releasing and seemingly having a pretty good reception. So we'll have to definitely see what that looks like when I post the review. But moving on to some little other movie news here. One of the movie news that we had was in Venice Beach, a massive Trojan horse has been placed in kind of a sponsoring of the upcoming Christopher Nolan film, The Odyssey. And as we can see here in this image, you got on the beach, you got the big Trojan horse. For anybody that doesn't maybe know their history classes, I see you listening from Houston, Texas. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're talking about this Trojan horse that was built over in Venice Beach and kind of cooperation as well as promotion for the upcoming Odyssey movie that we've talked about on the show before. And as you can see, they built it there on the beach. If you don't know your history classes, people, the Trojan horse is kind of seen as something that the as the Romans used. If I'm correct, I want to say it was the Romans. I might be wrong. Let me see. Actually, I might even just in case to make sure I got this right. But this was something that was talked about where the Trojans. Let's see here. Okay, so yes, it was used by the Greeks, where during the Trojan War they had built a horse to essentially infiltrate enemy lines in Troy, and they thought it was some sort of peace offering gift. Turns out it was a whole bunch of them just hiding in the horse. They break out and were able to pull out a surprise attack. Everybody should know about the Trojan horse, so it's cool that they're doing a little bit of that cross promotion for the upcoming Odyssey movie from Christopher Nolan, and it's cool that I forget what it used to feel like when movies would do this kind of cross promotion like this, because I remember growing up the days of movies doing stuff like this in live locations to help kind of support upcoming movies. So it's cool to see that they did that. It looks really cool. I definitely could see how that would be fun walking along Venice Beach and seeing this thing here and taking pictures. That looks like it would be a fun little landmark. So enjoy it while you can, people in California. But moving on to one of our little last movie news here, as you might have seen in my little post giving people heads up that we were going live, there is a new movie that had its teaser trailer drop today. And while we won't be watching the teaser trailer, we will be watching a clip from the movie where this upcoming movie, it's going to be a thriller movie called Whale Fall. And as it describes, the film follows a scuba diver who gets swallowed by a sperm whale and only has a limited time to escape before his oxygen runs out. This movie will be releasing October 16th this year, and this is one of the official posters. As you see the scuba diver trying to swim up there with the whale, and what looks like a squid in the mouth too, and he's trying to swim up. And I have seen the clip, which I will be showing you guys in a second, and you'll understand why there's a squid there too. But interesting premise. I think that this could be something here. I mean, underwater is a fear for a lot of people, and now you're talking about a underwater movie where we're following someone who is basically trapped in the mouth of a sperm whale. This movie could do good. This seems like one of those movies, kind of like 47 Meters Down. If you remember, that was that movie that came out years ago about those two girls that got into the shark cage. If you guys remember, and the cage broke, it fell down into the ocean, and essentially they were kind of trapped down there while sharks were circling them, and they had to try to survive while also keeping their oxygen up. That movie was a surprise, like a sleeper hit. It was a sleeper hit of a movie for sure. And when I look at this movie, I'm like, okay, there's potential here. There's potential for a sleeper, possibly good movie. And like I said, even the clip that was released for the movie, I'm like, okay, wait a minute, they might be cooking. So I'm gonna take my camera off, gonna mute myself, play the 43-second clip here for you guys, and then we'll come back and kind of talk about one of the other things that was shared about, well, kind of shown / shared about the movie here. So give me one sec while I turn my face cam off, and I'll play this clip for you guys. I don't know about you guys, but when I first saw that clip, I was just man, I mean when I started seeing that clip, and listen, I'm not the biggest fan of water, and especially deep water like that. So seeing that clip, I was like, because I'm just like, wow, what a way to, in my opinion, good way for a 43-second clip to, in my opinion, for me, pull me in like that. And as you can see in the clip, we're seeing how he ends up in the mouth of the sperm, and even the sperm whale. My bad, the sperm whale, where it looks like he's down there, he's kind of exploring the ocean, and then he comes across a sperm whale that's essentially kind of hunting a kind of a giant squid, and I guess he gets tangled up. And we even got another clip here, one where it was filmed, where I guess someone filmed maybe an extended look of the clip here, and someone Andrew J. Salazar had posted, if you're curious as to what it's like getting swallowed by a whale in 40X, I was invited to see the Whale Fall trailer in the format yesterday. So this is a clip from that teaser trailer that we did briefly mention that was released today that we're not going to be showing, but as you can see, this is in a 40X theater, and I can already imagine how this is going to look. So we are going to actually kind of play this here and kind of just break it down while watching. So as you see, he's down there in the ocean, and he's kind of in the middle of a sperm whale hunting what looks to be a giant squid, which I do know as far as I've seen from documentaries and stuff, that was kind of a main. Well, sperm whales really do like to eat squid and giant squid, and you see he's trying his best to get away. The squid is in a panic mode. It latches onto him while the sperm whale has it, and there's our clip right there where now he gets pulled into the mouth, and as you see, the seats are rocking, stuff is getting thrown around, there's probably even water getting sprayed in their faces, and I'm like, wow. This might be one of those movies, because over here in Texas, we do have a Regal Cinemas movie theater, and this might be one of those movies I might have to actually see in. I might have to see this movie in 40X to experience this, because this looks like this could be a thrill ride, to be feeling your seat shaking around and stuff. I don't know. I'm in that middle ground, because on one side I'm like, okay, that could be fun to get your seats rocking like as if you're on the Universal Studios ride, but then you get the water sprayed in your face. But then I'm like, okay, are they going to put those smells and stuff to kind of replicate what it would smell like inside the mouth of a whale? Which I'm like, okay, if I'm eating popcorn, I don't know if I want to be smelling all that. But overall, I think this looks good. Like I said, this looks like something similar to the likes of a 47 meters down, where it could be a sleeper hit, where no one was expecting this to be a good movie, but it turns out to be a really fun ride where people are like, you know what, this is a movie I could put on again and enjoy with people. Or some people might even feel like this is a movie to just wait till it comes to streaming and watch it at home, and a good popcorn flick. But again, it looks pretty fun. You share down below, chat. What do you guys think in the comments or the chat? Do you think that this could be a sleeper hit, or do you think that this is a movie that you maybe are just going to wait till it comes onto streaming? Or, hey, share, what do you think? Do you think that this premise looks exciting enough to maybe make you go and see it in theaters? But I think it has me sold. But with that being the last of the little movie news that we have, we're going to move on to some of our last topics here, and that is in the video game section. As I've stated before, there was a lot that happened this weekend, where we did talk about last week Tuesday. There was the big Sony State of Play, which was their kind of big showcase that went down. And then after Tuesday, we had on Friday, Sunday, and this morning, Tuesday, 3 other big game showcases occur, where on Friday we had the Summer Games Fest. Then on Sunday, we had the Xbox Games Showcase. And lastly, this morning, we had the Nintendo Direct for this month of June. And listen, before we do kind of go breaking down into things, I kind of want to just give y'all just a brief little history of why this lineup of showcases was seen so highly. Because there used to be a thing for a lot of people that were playing video games and stuff. There used to be a big event that would come out in the summer called E3. E3 was the kind of the head honcho. It was the big event that everybody everybody would go to. Essentially, if you wanted to get your video game news from all the studios, whether it's PlayStation, whether it was Xbox, whether it was anybody, you would watch E3 live events, and it was all in person. They had the big seats, all of that kind of stuff. And man, and I remember growing up watching this kind of stuff. I remember watching this. The interest was there. It was always so fun to watch, to tune into these just to see what they had. And there's a lot of moments. There's a lot of moments from this. But sadly, when COVID hit in 2020, you start to see a decline, because since E3 was a big event that used to require people to be there in attendance to react to these reveals, COVID sadly ruined that. And E3 tried its best to stay alive. It tried to move to more online showcases, but sadly they started to lose interest. Nintendo started to back away and be like, we're not gonna show up to your E3 events. We're gonna start doing our own online live streams and live showcases for people to watch us, which later on became more and more what we know today, the Nintendo Directs. Xbox started to do the same thing. That's where the Xbox Game Showcases started to come from. PlayStation started to do the same thing. That's where the State of Play came from. So E3 was the big thing. Then all these other ones, like I said before, the State of Play Direct, Xbox Game Showcase, and even the Summer Games Fest all kind of had to split off from E3 to kind of not cash in, but essentially get in on the whole online craze, because due to COVID. And officially then E3 was canceled in 2023. So to see all of these big showcases be back to back to back to back in a week, this felt to gamers like the closest we had to an E3 in years. And when I would say, well, we're like, before we go into kind of, like I said before, one thing I want to do before we do end the show is I kind of want to rank the 4 showcases from my favorite to least favorite, and then go from there. And so we're going to kind of just break down briefly. First one, that was on Friday, as I said before, the Summer Games Fest 2026. This is the Jeff Keighley hosted one. This is Jeff Keighley here. And as you can see, yes, Snoop Dogg did show up there at the event. And this was essentially because while PlayStation has their State of Play, Xbox has their Game Showcase, Nintendo has their Nintendo thing, the Games Fest is kind of the overall. They show off all kinds of games that were released on all those kind of consoles. And they had a lot of hype announcements. There was another game for the Final Fantasy franchise. There was some Street Fighter 6 news for a character that was going to be showing up from Final Fantasy, and Tifa Lockhart, and so on and so forth. But there were some announcements in here that were kind of the big stuff. And don't worry for anybody that was like, wait, is that Snoop Dogg? Don't worry, we're gonna get back to Snoop D-O-double-G in a second here. But so we're gonna kind of just share kind of the ones that really made the most noise, in my opinion, at Summer Games Fest on Friday. One of them being for Cuphead. For those that don't know, Cuphead was a well-known game that came out a couple years ago. Well, not a couple years ago, actually a while ago, where it was a game that was praised for essentially this studio for Cuphead. They hand drew every single frame of the game. So everything that the characters did in this game was drawn and animated by artists. Every single frame, every single detail. And it was kind of also a run and gun shooter. So as you kind of see in this image right here, you had Cuphead, who is the Cuphead right there with the red straw, and then you had Mugman with the blue straw. Those are the players, and then you got the boss. And essentially, as you would see, it was a run and gun. You'd hop around, face off against the bosses. You have to try to take their health down, etc. And the game was praised for its interesting graphics, how it looked, and just the overall love and care that went into this game overall. And of course, there was DLC for it, but there was no official sequel. Nothing was happening. People were like, okay, well, it's been kind of quiet. What's going on? There's got to be a sequel. The game was way too successful. And well, at the Summer Games Fest, we did have an announcement that was shown off here from the studio, where they did kind of as you can see, they did kind of a little bit of an old-timey commercial here of And at first when this happened, I was like, who the heck is this guy? And then I clocked the straw and I was like, okay, wait a minute, that's supposed to be Cuphead. And so you see, they really have a love and passion for taking whatever kind of era they want to be inspired by, they do everything they can in the production to go about it. And so they kind of did a little bit of an announcement thing, sharing the kind of sharing that an upcoming sequel is happening. That is another hand-drawn game, which that was the exciting news. But then they broke down kind of the big news that turns out there is another game in the works that was a kind of a surprise drop, and that is what's about to come here.
Over here? Ahem. Pretty radical.
Let's roll the clip.
Now in development at Studio MDHR. It's Mighty Cuphead Adventure. A new fast-action platform shooter with arcade-quality graphics and amazing sound. Mighty Cuphead Adventure.
Only from Studio MDHR.
I love that. That just screams, oh my goodness, that just screams old school right there. And it reminds me, because I've seen so many clips of those really old commercials, if you guys remember, where a lot of the video game characters would kind of come to life and they'd be 2D animated and stuff in the real world. They'd kind of be like 2D animated, popping out of the screen and all of that. And it was always fun to see that. So you see like where that clear inspirations, like as you see, one of those perfect examples, like these were those really old, the 90s kind of commercials. So you see that love and passion I'm talking about that they showed in there for that upcoming game. So that was one of the little announcements. Now, one of the next ones, we're about to get back to why Snoop Dogg was on stage, as he's going to be starring in an upcoming game called Stranger Than Heaven, which is a spinoff of a very well-acclaimed series, the Yakuza franchise. And in that Stranger Than Heaven game, they had a trailer that kind of revealed more cast members. And one of the cast members that was shown off that had everybody online go crazy, even the people that were there in attendance go crazy. They showed off that none other than Tupac. You heard that right. Tupac is in the game. Yes. You were seeing this right. That is Tupac, as they are using his likeness, and they even, when they revealed the cast name, it is Tupac. That Tupac is going to be in this upcoming game too. His likeness, I guess the Tupac estate family someone had to give the okay that they're going to be using this like this. I do always feel iffy about these kind of situations when they go about this, because it's always that weird middle ground of like okay, that's a weird ground to be doing it. I always feel weird about it, but the using the likeness thing I think is one thing. As long as they don't go the route of using like an AI generated voice to do it, then I think I could, I don't know, maybe be a little more comfortable with the idea of it. But still, it doesn't take away the fact that when he came stepping out of the shadows, I was like, hold up a second. I was like, is that? And then the next one, his name goes flashing up on the screen and it says Tupac. And I'm like, what? But yes, Tupac will be joining Snoop Dogg in Stranger Than Heaven in this video game. And then they had Snoop Dogg come up on the stage. He was talking with Jeff Keighley, and he kind of expressed how he's excited to be working with these people behind the game, and that he also was glad to be seeing that Tupac will be having some sort of role in the game as well. And that he's kind of talking about his close relationship with Tupac and stuff, and how it's just, he said he's just excited overall. And then they also kind of, one of the things they talked about briefly before we move on to one of our next news here, was they talked about their game company, Death Row Games. And of course, you guys, I think everybody, especially for any OGs, as you guys call yourselves, any OGs that were growing up in that era of rap, you guys, of course, know Death Row Records, the rap label that used to be owned by a certain Suge Knight, that then passed down and now is essentially owned by Snoop Dogg. Well, they now have a game studio. Him and his son, Yeah, both Snoop Dogg and his son, they're running this Death Row Games. And they kind of, I remember it was last year at the Game Awards, they announced that they wanted to start bringing more hip hop games to the general public to kind of get people introduced to just the hip hop culture and stuff in through a video game format, which was like, okay, that's cool. Then when he was on stage, he said something where Jeff Keighley turned to him and was like, "Oh yeah, what is there anything you want to tell us about Death Row Games?" And he's like, "Oh well, we got to talk. We want to be bringing the culture over to the general public, and just make sure everybody knows what's up." And he's like, well, maybe you guys might have some news for us in the coming months. Essentially, kind of teasing they might have a big announcement coming up here. And I have a prediction for a possible game that they could be doing, and that is for anybody that was growing up in that 90s era with all those rappers and stuff that were big at the time. I don't know about you, but I would not be surprised, and I've heard a lot of other gamers say it too, if Snoop and them might be trying to bring Def Jam back. For those who don't know, back in the 90s, this was a very big fighting game where they basically took a lot of big name rappers, whether it was Snoop Dogg, Ludacris, Fat Joe, Ja Rule, etc., etc. They would play characters in the game, and it was essentially a fighting game where and people always talked about how fun they were. And it has a fan base. And I don't know, the fact that Snoop Dogg says that there might be some news from Death Row Games in these coming months, they might do it. They might bring Def Jam back, which would be crazy to see them bring this old franchise back to the public and the general audience after all these years, especially considering all the new rappers that are now roaming around. Like, I'm just saying, imagine they get the rights to have Drake and Kendrick Lamar in this game. People get to play as Kendrick fighting Drake and continue the beef between them. That would be something right there. So there's a little bit of some hype for me to possibly see this game make a comeback. And I know that there's got to be a few people out there who maybe are tuning in that might actually remember when Def Jam was out and about. And even as you can see, since the old game, you can't really play it on modern consoles. You see people, the scalpers, as we call them, are on eBay trying to oversell the game for $350. So yeah, I'm hoping they bring Def Jam back so then we could have a new game on modern consoles for cheaper price and these people could disappear. But we're going to go kind of move on to one of the other announcements that was there at the the Summer Games Fest, and that was the Wolf Among Us 2. This was from the game Telltale, which is they were a well-known company that would make these. They wouldn't make like the full-blown, how do I say it? The full-blown you play kind of games. It was more so storytelling games. So you might have seen maybe through Facebook memes or etc. where you maybe see like someone does a decision, right? And then you see like the little white words pop up at the top and it says, so-and-so will remember that. Well, that's where it stemmed from, was Telltale. And so you'd always pick decisions. Your decisions would affect how the game would move forward as you carried on. And the game had this really good technology where it would remember your last decisions. And as new chapters would come out, your decisions basically affected how your story would go. And there was a lot of news. Telltale looked like they might have been going out of business. Wolf Among Us 2 was announced years back. Oh my goodness. Years back, this game was announced after the first one ended, where they announced the game was supposed to be coming out in 2023. As you probably know, we are in 2026. No one knew what was going on with Wolf Among Us 2. Everybody was like, what is going on with this game? Is it canceled? Is it dead? What is happening? And at the Summer Games Fest, Jeff Keighley, he looks at the crowd and says, we're returning back to a universe that we haven't experienced in 8 years. And then we saw the trailer for Wolf Among Us 2, and everybody, the crowd erupted. And I erupted too, because I love the first Wolf Among Us game. Essentially, for those that don't know, for my non-gamers out there, Wolf Among Us was essentially kind of a more serious kind of crime noir take on a lot of the fairy tale stories. So your main character you play was Bigsby, who was essentially, in this world, he's the big bad wolf. but he's a detective, but everybody knows him as the big bad wolf and everything. And it's like, oh, there's Bigsby, the big bad wolf, as they'd always refer to him. As you see that the female character, one of the female characters down here who was actually helping him in the previous case, that is Snow White. Yes, that is Snow White right there. So it was a more serious, like I said, crime noir take on a lot of the fairy tale stories. You'd see so many other characters from fairy tales pop up, and overall, it's a fun game. And this sequel is going to kind of have it where now a new mystery arises where now Bigsby has to face off against, as they're quoted, the Oz Gang. And as you're probably like sitting there like, wait, did you say the Oz Gang? Like as in the Wizard of Oz? Yes, I'm talking about the Wizard of Oz. So Bigsby's next foes that he will have to be facing in the story will be consisting of, yes, the main four from the Wizard of Oz, from Dorothy, the Tin Man, the Cowardly Lion, and Scarecrow, as they are running kind of a gang, and a new mystery comes up where he's gonna have to get to the bottom of it and have to take down the Oz Gang at the end of the day. So overall, when I saw that trailer, I'm excited. I can't wait to see what they have in store. I hope that this is able to live up to the original, and I'm just glad that it is not dead. I'm just overall glad. And even as you can see from this Instagram post showing the last time we saw Bigsby was back in October 11th, 2013, and we're finally going to be returning with him 14 years later. Oh my goodness. Time is flying, guys. 14 years since that came out. Wow. Whew. But yeah, again, I'm excited. I can't, like I said, can't wait to see what they got in store for us there with this upcoming game. One of the other big announcements was for another game that people thought was dead, and that was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Last Ronin game, which this game was announced a while back along with a movie, a live-action movie that was supposed to be happening, and it was announced. There was a lot of hype. Now, for those that don't know, this is based off of a comic run that was going on for the Ninja Turtles where, well, I don't want to spoil in case anybody that does watch this ends up being like, wait a second, I kind of want to know more about this. Essentially, this takes place years in the future where one of the four remaining turtles is left alive after something happens where the other brothers are killed off. And one of the brothers is left alive and turns into this kind of super gritty, vengeful vigilante going out there trying to get revenge for the death of his family. I'm not going to tell you which. That's the mystery of kind of the comic for the longest time, is figuring out which of the turtles is the Ronin. And I'm not going to tell you myself. So if you do end up deciding to maybe go and research about it, look up the comic, you'll be able to find out easily because this comic run has been completed. But it was one of the highest selling Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle comics of modern times. It was popular. People loved it. And there was a video game announced and a movie. Well, while there was so much hype, sadly, the movie was announced to be put on the shelf, meaning that they were essentially announcing that the movie is on hold until they feel comfortable maybe going back into doing the movie. So essentially, unless we get any good news, that movie might be getting canceled. And there was a lot of rumors, and I thought for sure reports that the game was canceled too. Well, at Summer Games Fest, there was a trailer. All I saw was the Paramount logo for Paramount Games. I see a sewer, and I'm like, wait a minute. Is this what I think it is? And then they showed this image of the Last Ronin, and I was like, yes, another video game that has thankfully not been canceled. So I can't wait for this one. I know it's going to be action-packed. It's going to be intense. And for anybody that has not read the comics and intends on getting this game, you're in for a good story. Scout's honor, you're in for a good story with this one. So I'm excited, and I can't wait to see what they got in store as far as the game-wise and how they adapt the comic run. But one of the last kind of big announcements from that big Summer Games Fest that I kind of expected to get some sort of reveal sooner rather than later was Alien Isolation 2. Some people who might be game fans might remember the first Alien Isolation game. It was a game where you're playing kind of on one of the ships and you're being hunted down by, of course, one of the alien xenomorphs on there. The game was praised for the AI inside the game, not generative AI coding, and it was praised for how well the AI played, where if you say, for example, let's give you kind of a breakdown. If you were to hide somewhere, right, hide into a cabinet, something like that, it would work the first time on the alien, but if you tried to do it again, the AI was so smart in the game, it would then know your previous tricks, and you would have to keep trying your best to survive while also finding new ways to survive, if you understand where I'm getting at, because that it was that good. And it was a couple months ago, we had the announcement that they were working on a sequel. It was exciting. We did get a trailer showing off. When they started showing certain things, I was like, wait a second, Sega, is this what I think it is? And lo and behold, Alien Isolation 2 is happening. And I know that this game will do good. The first one did good for a reason. This one will do good as well. So congrats to them being able to make a sequel. And I know the compilations of people playing this game getting scared of this Xenomorph AI are going to be losing it, because it's going to probably be even more better than it was in the first one. But we're going to keep moving here. As before we get into one of the other little showcases, we have to kind of talk about something that happened in between before the Xbox Showcase. On Saturday, there was an announcement from a few news sites, one of them even being Discussing Film, a very trusted source, another one being Kotaku, and they reported that a certain Godzilla game had gotten leaked to be happening. And when I saw it, my heart my heart stopped, because I was like, wait a minute. This can't be happening, because and it was for a remaster of a very classic Godzilla game called Godzilla Destroy All Monsters Melee. I remember growing up on, not this game per se, because this game came out the year I was born, so I wasn't old enough to be knowing how to even handle a controller. But when the later games came out, because this is called the Pipeworks trilogy, the Pipeworks Godzilla trilogy. So they had the first game, which was Destroy All Monsters, that came out in 2002. Then they came out with the sequel, which was Godzilla Save the Earth. And the last of the trilogy was Godzilla Unleashed. I played more of Save the Earth and Unleashed as a kid. And I'm going to move my little camera here so you guys can see a little of the box art here. Give me 1 sec. There we go. So yeah, as a kid, I remember playing these two. I definitely remember playing these two just a tad bit more than the first one. But I still do remember playing a little Destroy All Monsters Melee, because my history with it, I remember going to, when I was living in California with my mom, there was a barbershop, a kid's barbershop we used to go to, and they had consoles in there. So while the kids were getting their hair cut, you would be able to play on games. And I remember they had Mario Kart Double Dash, and they had the SpongeBob movie video game. But one of the other ones that they had was Destroy All Monsters Melee and Save the Earth. So I grew up playing those games. Then as I got older, got my own Wii, I remember I had Godzilla Unleashed, and I played that one a lot. So much so to the point where then it got scratched. I was heartbroken, but my mom, being the goat that she is, she went out of her way. I remember she ordered a copy of Godzilla Unleashed for me. She knew how much I loved the game. And if you're watching, Mom, I just want to say thank you. I remember that you helped my kid heart back then, because I was so distraught when I couldn't play it anymore because the disc was scratched up. Who remembers those days when your disc would get scratched up and you couldn't play it anymore? It wouldn't work. And I remember I was so distraught because this was my favorite game to play, and I was so upset. And Mom then surprised me, ordering me a new version of the game, and I was able to continue playing it. And I had a lot of memories playing with my cousins and so on and so forth. I remember even taking the game with me to the YMCA, playing with some of the people there. So I have a history with this trilogy, and with that history, I had been, along with other Godzilla fans, hoping and pleading that the people behind Godzilla would understand that there are people that want these games to come back and do some remasters, do some remakes, bring the games back. And now years and years and years and years, nothing. All we knew was the people, Pipeworks, they were like, we want to make this game, but Toho hasn't came back to us. We have to get the rights from them to be able to do it. And then this leak came out that's reporting that there is a remaster being made for Destroy All Monsters. But here's the thing. We were like, there's no way. But it's a lot of officials. It was like, is this true? Is it not true? We didn't know what was going on. But thankfully, we didn't have to wait too long, as literally the day of that the leak happened, then people's prayers were answered. People's prayers were answered, and a trailer was then dropped. Online multiplayer. Yeah, I mean, when I saw this, I was like, wow, they're doing it. They're doing it after all these years. And I mean, if I can even try to see here to bring a comparison, let's see, remaster comparison. And yes, this game will be coming to modern Xbox consoles, modern PlayStation consoles, as well as the Switch 2. And if I could try to see, here we go. Here's kind of a good image right here. Let me see if I can kind of pull it up. So you guys see kind of the graphics from the top. That's the 2002 graphics, these 2026 graphics. And you see the big difference. It's an overhaul and how much they want this game to be looking. I just want you to see that. You see that year mark, 2002 to 2026, that this game is going to be releasing. 24 years since this game has came out, and it's finally coming back. So, like I said, you can hear from my voice how excited I am with this, especially being a Godzilla fan. And I can't wait for it to come out. And now there's all these memes too, because originally GTA 6 was going to be the only game coming out in originally GTA 6 was supposed to be the only game coming out in November, and then Godzilla Destroy All Monsters said, hold on a second, we got some competition for you. And now all the memes have been just GTA 6 when Godzilla Destroy All Monsters Melee got announced, being like, wait a minute, we got to compete with Godzilla. So now there's a meme of everybody's like, what if GTA 6 gets delayed again because they don't want to compete with Godzilla? That would be the funniest story ever. So, oh my goodness, so much slander would come from that if it was to happen. But as you can see, I'm very excited. I can't wait for it. I'm glad that finally Pipeworks gets to remaster this, hopefully the trilogy, if this first one does good. So we'll have to just see. But some of our last two announcements that happened with showcases were, some of the last two was the Xbox Game Showcase that happened on Sunday. I'm going to kind of shrink my face cam here. This was kind of the breakdown of all of the upcoming games that they announced during that showcase. Some, of course, some for the general audience. You had some Call of Duty, Halo, Gears of War, Metro, Fable. Some of them I'm like, okay, like I know that they're classics. I hear the names and I'm like, okay. Some of the ones that I was like pretty more excited about, Crazy Taxi, that's a Sega game. I remember that. If you might remember, it was that game where you played as a taxi driver. You had to be racing against the clock to make sure you got your customers to their destinations before time ran out, while also making sure that the ride wasn't like crazy, but at the same time, the point of the game, Crazy Taxi, you had to be crazy. So that was an exciting one. Sadly, that excitement got killed off because they announced that it was revealed that Sega sadly did use generative AI in some of the assets that they were using to make the game. So now that just killed a lot of the hype, and I'm like, dang, why can't you just pay people, pay humans to work on your games instead of all this AI stuff? So that was disappointing to see. So definitely not a game I'll be interested in. But one of the big ones that was announced that I was like, okay, you have my attention, and that was Spyro. Yes, a new Spyro game is coming out after all these years. It has been a while since that trilogy they did. That was a remastering of the original 3 Spyro games, and now the Purple Dragon is back. He's back at it again with a brand new game. And yeah, he looks good. This is his new redesign in the game here. As you see, he looks a lot older compared to you see the hair looks longer. His tail looks a little longer. Like a lot of features of him look a little different, especially if you consider how he used to look like. Let's see if I can pull up an image here of from how he looked in the Reignited trilogy. This was the remakes they did. Here we go. So this is kind of how he looked. This is kind of how he looked there. If I can, let's see. Don't care about that. So yeah, as you see, this was his design of those remakes. So clearly, when they made those remakes, they were taking into account with the redesign that they would take this design and then kind of enhance whatever they wanted to do. And as you can see, it is a night and day difference. Like, this clearly shows a more younger Spyro. They're clearly going for here a more older Spyro, showing that he is coming of age. And I remember when I was a kid playing on my Game Boy Advance, some of those old Game Boy Advance Spyro games. So I was familiar with Spyro, and I'm very excited. I know there's a lot of Spyro fans, including myself, that are happy that we're finally, after all these years, getting our official Spyro 4. So it's good to see him back. Glad to see you back, buddy, because Crash had that where he had his remake trilogy and then had a fourth game a couple years later made to continue off of that with a redesign. And now Spyro gets to join him. Two PlayStation icons that now are owned by Xbox, which is a ironic twist of fate that two PlayStation characters that were made for PlayStation, that were PlayStation icons, are now owned by a rival company in Xbox. So glad to see that Xbox is starting to show the love for Spyro after all these years, and can't wait to see. Hopefully this game is good. That's all I can say. But tell me in the chat below, did you grow up maybe knowing Spyro, or did you maybe see this little purple dragon roaming around in the 90s back in those game wars of Mario, Sonic, Crash, and Spyro? Did you see this guy anywhere in that marketing? But one of the last little ones that we talked about was the Nintendo Direct here. That was the final of the game showcases. That was this morning, Tuesday, so the recent one. And I'm just going to be honest here. There was a few announcements. There was the announcement of a Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time remake. Some people should I think there's a few people out there that remember Legend of Zelda and Link. You might remember you played as the hero in the green tunic. In the green tunic with the sword and the shield, and you had to go and save the princess and all of that kind of stuff. Franchise that's been around for a while. We have talked a little bit about the movie that's supposed to be coming out soon, and they announced that they are remaking one of the classic games in Ocarina of Time, game that's been out for years, that did get a remake when the 3DS console came out years ago, and now there's going to be a new remake. And I'm excited for that one. The graphics look good. It's cool to see that we're getting another remake on a modern console. So we'll have to see how well it plays. So that was one. Another one was Kingdom Hearts 4. I remember that was another kind of a hype announcement. But other than that, I have to say the Nintendo Direct was kind of the weakest one, considering what it had to compete with. And speaking of competition, like I said, I kind of wanted to do just a little bit of a ranking between the overall the 4 game showcases that occurred these past couple days. And so if I had to say my number one, like in my opinion, that had the best announcements, that overall had me like the most hyped watching it with everything I saw, I think I got to give it to Jeff Keighley and the Summer Games Fest. This was, in my opinion, the best. I think this was the best one. It had so much going for it. It had the Final Fantasy announcement. It had, like I said, the Stranger Than Heaven Tupac announcement, with Snoop Dogg showing up there. They had some Tomb Raider remake announcements there. Alien Isolation. There was a lot of stuff there that just, I was like, yes, this is cool. This is hype. And I was like, okay, you're pulling me in. I think this was, in my opinion, the best showcase out of all of them. The next one, I think that was the second best one. I'm going to have to give it to the Xbox Game Showcase. This here, while it didn't have a lot of the games that I normally play, I think to me, on the scale of recognizable games, I'd have to say they had the most. From, like I said, there was Halo, there was Call of Duty, there was Gears of War, Fable, Metro, Minecraft, Spyro, State of Decay, Doom, Crazy Taxi, Fallout, Elder Scrolls. This had a lot more games. I was like, okay, why might not play some of these games? I know them because of how well known they are. Persona 6, there was a lot more in this. That was just a lot more to grasp at. So I would definitely say this was my second favorite of the game showcases. Third favorite would have to go to the one that we talked about last week, Tuesday, and that was the state of play from Sony for their PlayStation console. That one was a good one. It was, to me, I feel like depending on the day, it could easily swap in between, back and forth between Xbox. Don't get me wrong, they had some announcements here and there that were pretty good. And my bad, I did say Tomb Raider remake was shown at the Summer Games Fest. It was not. It was shown at the State of Play, so that is my bad. I will acknowledge that. But this one, I think it's going to be one of those things where one day I could be like the Xbox was my second favorite, but then on another day, I might say the PlayStation, because the PlayStation gave me more footage on the upcoming Rayman game, which is another classic platformer I grew up on. It showed footage for the Wolverine game. It showed, of course, it did show a little bit of that Tomb Raider remake that looks pretty good. It showed some upcoming characters for that Marvel fighting game. So there was a lot of announcements that were like really like, ooh, you know what I'm saying? But both are really good. So like I said, it's kind of tied for that second place. But at this current moment, I'd say Xbox is 2, State of Play is 3. And like I said before, the last one that I'm just like, I don't know what they were thinking. It wasn't good. It just wasn't good to me. It was sadly the Nintendo Direct. And I think what hurt this Direct for me, this game showcase, is your Nintendo. In my opinion, you should be showing more games that are based on Nintendo games. First party games, as we call it. When we talk third party, is if it's not a Nintendo game and it's from another company, that's a third party game. So like, say for example, if Sega had a game coming to a Nintendo console, that's a third party game. But then if a Nintendo game is coming to a Nintendo system, that's a first party game. So I felt like there should have been a lot more first party announcements, and there wasn't. There was a lot of third party announcements, a lot of games that had already been previously announced at all the other showcases that they were reconfirming are coming to the Nintendo Switch 2. And it felt more like a partner showcase than an actual Nintendo Direct. And considering that you had tough competition like the Summer Games Fest, like the Xbox Games Showcase, like the State of Play, and all you could show was footage from games that were hyped up or announced at the other showcases, that just takes off points. And the games that did get announced that didn't get announced at other showcases were games that weren't Nintendo games. And while they might have been hype, it still felt like, well, I kind of want to hear more about Nintendo. So it just, maybe it was a case of there was too much expectations going into this Direct, and that's why it's the most disappointing. I don't know for sure. But to me, I think this was the weakest one. It just could not compare to the other 3 that came before it. And that's just, you expect a little better from Nintendo considering how long Nintendo has been around for. You would think that they would be able to they'd be able to clear out all the other guys, but sadly they could not do it. But that's my little ranking, and that's really all that we got left for tonight's show today. I know this kind of went a little longer than expected, but there was just a little bit of stuff that we had to go over, and especially the game section, there was a lot to break down from the announcements, so I had to make sure I was able to do as much as I could to add a little of that substance. But as always, glad to be seeing everybody that did tune in and get a chance. And then, of course, you guys already know this stuff will be on YouTube. In case you did miss it live, you'll be able to rewatch it on the channel as always. And again, we'll be live every Tuesday, 7:30 p.m. Central, 5:30 p.m. Pacific, and 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I love you guys. Take care, and y'all have a good night.